A Pekin man who police say had pipe bombs last Friday was in court for his detention hearing this afternoon. Good evening, I'm Janice Repholz. Selah Estelle joins us with what happened in the courtroom tonight. Selah?
Yes, Janice. 34-year-old Dalton Mattus is charged with unlawful use or possession of a weapon and possession of explosives. This afternoon, the judge ruled that Mattus will remain at the Tazewell County Jail until his trial. Prosecutors cited concerns for public safety and his unstable housing situation to keep Mattus behind bars. Mattus was a passenger in a car that Pekin police stopped for a traffic violation. Police reports obtained by 25 News show Mattus did not want officers to search the vehicle, and he kept trying to lock the car doors. When officers searched the car, they found multiple syringes in a padlocked bag, which Mattus told officers they needed a warrant to search. After obtaining the warrant hours later, officers found 2 pipe bombs and a loaded handgun inside the bag, leading to an evacuation of those working in City Hall. Peoria Police Department's bomb squad were called to safely dispose the devices. Pekin police obtained an arrest warrant for Mattus at his apartment complex on South 2nd Street in and after a brief standoff with police and SWAT. Mattus surrendered and was taken into custody.
We believe that we have recovered all of the materials that could have been used for making those devices, and we've, through the investigation and interview of the suspect, we believe that the general public was not at threat.
During the arrest interview, Mattus admitted researching how to make explosive devices, and police discovered 3 more devices inside. Mattus informed officers that he did not want to hurt anyone with the bombs, and he was not planning an attack.
We do believe through our investigation and the interview that Mr. Mattus isn't tied to any larger organization or would be any national threat. We have notified other agencies, both state and federal.
Mattus also told officers that the bombs and firearm were for his protection from undocumented immigrants and a corrupt government. Mattus was also involved in a prior investigation for a burglary in Pekin in April. His next court date is June 20th.